Hey guys, welcome back to another video in the second in a gigantic series of 24-25 season previews. We did transfers this morning with Asan from 9320. Had to bring in more City royalty to discuss the second part of this preview. And this time it's the squad depth we're approaching today. And I've got Mr. Amos Murphy from the newly rebranded, well, not very newly rebranded, but reasonably newly branded City Ramble, which was formerly the City Report podcast. Amos, firstly, welcome, and how are you enjoying the new rebrand?
Well, as you can see, repping the
Loving the
t-shirts.
merch.
Yeah, absolutely, great quality as well. A little plug there straight off the bat. No, it's cool. We had Adam and I had a great couple of years with City Report. Lots of love for them guys. They sort of supported us, helped us get off the ground, and then sort of we took the stabilizers off and have gone independent. And yeah, it's been good. We started back up doing the daily episode, so podcast platforms, etc. Second plug. Should start charging commission here. I will stop, I promise. But yeah, all good. All good. I had a nice summer. I'm excited to get back to it.
Yeah, you start to you get used to the daily content, don't you? And you start to miss football when it's not there. And
Yeah.
I was saying this morning, I am so up for this season. I don't know why I've got the bug. I've got the bug this season, like more than most. I think it's because actually the way the squad's built, which we'll get onto in a little bit. And I think there's a lot of youthful energy there is what I would say, which I'm sure we'll discuss. And to me, there's seeds of excitement, but I'm not going to pretend it's going to be perfect. Guys, don't forget, if you are new to this content, please give the video a like and please subscribe. And of course, check out the City Ramble. There is a link to the Twitter in the description of this video, and follow Amos as well. Amos Murphy _ I think it is, isn't it? Is that right?
Correct.
Yeah, top of my head. And of course, check him out on all your podcast services and all that kind of stuff. You'll find them, the City Ramble. It's worth doing it. So this is going to be an intro of an intro when I cut this video up later. So let's get into the squad depth. Bubbled that. Start again. So let's get into the squad depth with Amos and talk about City's 24-25 squad. As I'm currently recording this, it's obviously mid-August. It could change, but we can only talk about the season, preview it right now because it starts this weekend. So we'll jump over to a list that I've compiled, and then we'll go into it and talk about it. So there we go. This is the squad depth as I've written it down for recognised players that I think will be there. You'll already turn around and go, well, what about people like Peroni or Cabore or Wilson Esbrand? I think they're all going, so they're not on there. We can happily argue this if you want to, Amos, but I haven't put those on there because I just don't think they'll be there personally. I've used players that that are currently around the team of the Community Shield. I know Cabore is, but he's come on, give me this one. And onwards, I presume will be. So this is the squad that I've got here. You know, you've got Edison Ortega, Diaz Akanji, Vardiol Walker, Ake Stones Lewis, Rodri O'Reilly, Foden Kovacic, De Bruyne Nunes, Doku Grealish, McAtee, Bob Savino, and Haaland. And I want to say already, that's not a starting 11. It's just a bunch of players that have played recently. And everyone will go, this shouldn't be 11. But I've been there a billion times. Bernardo, don't tell me I've missed Bernardo off there. Oh my you kidding me?
If he goes now, it's your fault. If he
my
gets a transfer,
God,
it's your fault.
I have missed him off there. But you know what? I can update this during the video, so I'm going to do it right now. I can't believe I've done that. I know. I'm going to put Kovacic alongside O'Reilly down there, so a little bit of depth, and I'll bring him on. I can't believe I've done that.
Does that make us Gary Neville and Jamie Carragher?
Yeah,
I don't know which one's worse. To be fair, which one?
You know what's annoying is that I actually typed his name out at one point, so I've obviously accidentally deleted it because I remember doing it. So there we go. I'll update it right now, and thankfully, when I chop this video up later, I can pretend it never happened, and I'll you know just overlay it in a different way. But yeah, Bernardo should be there as well. I'll obviously update this graphic in a second for you, mate, so you got a better thing to reference. But how do you feel looking your top line impression? How do you feel looking at that squad?
The overlying feeling is one of happiness, I think. Quietly, City and Guardiola have sort of built over the summer a nice looking squad. My opinion on this actually changes daily, which isn't great for this sort of video. But I do feel like, I know we'll get into it, but I do feel like City could be one, maybe two players short. But I don't think it's a desperate need at this stage. I think if City started the season with that squad, it's great. They're in a great place. Part of that is because of the manager. If City had a different manager, I'd be saying, we're certainly 2 or 3 players short because you're not going to get the most out of those players. It's a silly point, a basic point, but Guardiola's going to get much more out of them. At the moment, though, happy. There's plenty of players there that can play several positions. That we know that's how the season usually goes. Is the weaknesses? Yeah, of course there is, but which squad in the Premier League and European football doesn't have weaknesses?
Should we go through? We'll go through each position. It makes the best way to do that. I've updated the graphics as Bernardo's on there now, and he looks better actually. So I'm glad I did that. It just looks a lot more full immediately. So obviously we'll go in goal. It was a massive, massive boost to keep Ederson. There was lots of debates online about the quality of Ortega, and I think it was reasonably irrelevant in the end because even if Ederson had gone, we've struggled to find number two as good as Ortega. Look at it that way, you know. So then you would lose something because you're not going to get anyone who comes in who would be at the level of one of them. You know, I would argue. You know, so that was the problem there. So we've kept both. I'm sure you're happy about that, right?
Yeah, I was one of them people banging the Edison drum, and I think had he gone, you say fair enough. He's won everything. He's, for my money, probably one of the top three goalkeepers in Premier League history. That it's a weird statement because I don't think he's necessarily the best even in the league in terms of a goalkeeper. But what he's done for City and how he's transformed that position, you're talking only really Manuel Neuer in the modern era who's had that sort of impact. I like Ortega. I think he is not as good as Edison, and that I think it's as simple as that.
No, that's a totally fair view. I'm genuinely happy with whichever starts always. But I do maintain what I just said before. I don't think we would have found an adequate replacement for either of them, and that would have matched the level. So ultimately, we're better off with a pair of them, and I'm really happy about that. And I expect. You know, a lot of the problems of Edison were around him being pushed, and look, and ultimately Ortega is he's going to push into a level, you know, that he hasn't previously reached, or you know, he'll be number one. So I think we're in a win-win situation with the pair of them. I've saw some people talking about potentially a lack of options defensively. Like, are we maybe a player light there? Ultimately, that's the same back line as last season, unless I'm missing anything. Sergio Gomez, you could add there, you know, previously.
Rest in peace.
I mean, I don't think he ever really played at left back, and it felt, I don't know. I mean, technically, he would have been a Carabao Cup player, and maybe he would have started there. So you could argue that means you have to play Ake or Vardiol there instead. But do we need potentially another defender, Amos, or is this more than enough?
It goes back to what I said at the start, where had it been if City had a different manager, then I'd be looking at that back line saying it's probably two players short. Left back cover, obviously Ake can slide across, but I do think City at times, in the very few minutes Sergio Gomez played, benefited from that left-footed sort of marauding player who wanted to get forward. I think maybe he played against Huddersfield. You know, there is a role for that player, albeit it probably doesn't top 300 minutes per season. My biggest concern, and it isn't sort of where other people's concerns are going into the new season, my personal biggest concern is on the right-hand side of defence, because you know, England fans will attest this, but also we saw it at the back end of last season at times. I just don't think Kyle Walker can play 50 games a season. And I don't know if he, and this is going to come back in a month or two's time when he starts the season and he's flying and he looks back to his best and saying, oh, doesn't he age well? I just don't know if he's up to it anymore, which is fine because he's getting on and he's a little bit older and he's had an incredible career and he will go down as one of the best players of this modern era for Manchester City. But at 33 years old, you do maybe have to ask, does that position need strengthening? That was my opinion at the start of the summer, having watched Rico Lewis in pre-season play from the right-hand side. You know, jury's out whether or not it is as an orthodox right-back, but he does operate that side of the pitch. I'm a little calmer about it, but I do think that's somewhere, if not this summer, and let's face it, it's not going to be this summer, but certainly in the next 12 months, City really have to start looking towards the future.
I would sort of counter with the Rico Lewis because I thought he was really good in preseason. I know you didn't say that, but I feel very positive towards him right now as a right back more than I have for a long
totally.
time.
I think he's more than suited, and that's why it sort of quelled that concern a little bit. But just in terms of that position, I think maybe in the future it could need to.
And there's always the argument as well to go back to what we did in the treble campaign where Kanji was at right back essentially.
Yeah,
and like to me that would be easily be my first choice with then Ake alongside Deals or Stones or whatever, or any of those two of those three with Vardiol there, because Kanji has got so much better technically going forward, as we know, because he's forced to play midfield for a while. He's just more comfortable going forward. That I'd be so happy with him on the right there, and on the right, look. I think Rico looks like he's come up a little bit more. Might be wrong there, but I thought he was excellent. One of his best pure right back performances against United, and I didn't really buy the blaming of him for the Rashford things. I think there was chaos in front of him, and I just didn't really think it was his fault as such. I think it was just more
I think it was actually on Kovacic and O'Reilly. I think there was just Casemiro and Fernandes were just walking past them as if they weren't there.
And to be fair, those two played well. I thought
Yeah,
United,
they did.
They played well. I would actually have Akanji as City's first choice right back this season. I think Walker's got a role to play, certainly, but I think it would maybe be more secondary one. But having seen last season, and interestingly, I don't know if you've seen how much his minutes jumped from the treble campaign, Walker, compared to last season. I think he almost doubled. It's quite telling, and I think it'll be interesting, just one to bookmark this season, whether or not we see that trend continue with Kyle Walker.
That's really interesting.
So that's my one to watch. I think certainly City. I think they should be working towards probably next summer. Let's face it. But certainly right back is a potential issue, not an issue, but a potential one.
Elsewhere, I mean, I think I'm fine with that defense. You could argue for maybe one more versatile player, but I think there's a push. I think ultimately, Vardy, Diaz, Akanji, Ake, Stones, Walker, Lewis is enough. I reckon. I mean, you can make that work, can't you? Calvin Phillips isn't on there, and people in the chat are happy about it. But I'm sorry. Come on, he ain't going to be here.
It would be fun
if he is there. Fair enough. I should have put a list of players there, maybe at the side who have their futures and sorted. There's always a chance that a player hangs around because they can't get a move, and it wouldn't be, I guess, a freakish coincidence if Calvin Phillips couldn't get a move. But I don't know. I feel like he's going to move on. That's my personal opinion.
Yeah.
But obviously, the gaping hole at the heart of this team is below Rodri there. I mean, the two, obviously, I'm not saying those two are direct backups for them. They're just players are put on a pitch in a certain position there for the graphic. But we can't ignore that this squad would feel a billion times better if that hole in particular was plugged, right? If we had, a reliable option. I'm of the opinion, and I've said this before online, and I stand by this. Look, I understand in a big game, there's no alternative to Rodri. Would be absolutely done in. We'd have no chance. But I don't really buy it that we should fall to pieces at home against an Ipswich or whatever. I feel like the reason we did last season, Pep didn't try hard enough to make it work. I'm sorry, that sounds quite aggressive, but this should be some combination of Fernando, that'd be great, Fernandinho, Foden or Bernardo or Kovacic or Rico Lewis or whatever, all these players and De Bruyne, there's more than the quality there to pick a free and then have them do the job against someone at home. So I don't buy that, but I agree. I agree that ideally someone who could play alongside Rodri of pure quality, they could start alongside him to step in when he's not there would be great. How concerned are you about the potential Rodri situation?
Again, it's an opinion that keeps changing every day, because I think if you look at the paper as we're doing now and you look at the squad in front of you, you say, yes, that is objectively an issue, but it only becomes an issue when Rodri isn't there. And even he's going to start the biggest games, of course he is. He's also going to start the medium games. He's probably going to start the sort of the smaller to medium games as well, just because how reliant City are on him being there. I think even if you had a backup, and we saw this a little bit the times Calvin Phillips was available in 22-23, Rodri was still playing the sort of the games where you say, all right, just take him out. But he's that. It's like Haaland. Haaland's going to play whenever he's fit. Rodri's going to play whenever he's fit. I think the only time we really saw him rested in the running last season was before the Real Madrid at home game, which ironically Kovacic stepped in for. And I do believe he's grown into that role. Let's not forget, he arrived, obviously a seasoned professional, super experienced, but he only arrived at City last summer. And to sort of absorb all of the Guardiola information you need to play that position, it's going to take time. So if August 30th, the deadline, whenever it is, comes and goes and City haven't added in that midfield, I'm not losing sleep over it until Rodri tries to chokehold Morgan Gibbs-White again, or he gets sent off, or it's so flippant, but it only becomes an issue when he isn't there, and you just have to touch wood, cross fingers that he is going to be there.
I can't help but feel
he is.
If that happens, it's because Pep's gone, we'll make do. I know people don't like hearing that, but ultimately, I don't. It's just sort of his call, and we can talk about what Pep's very good is getting away with it, and he got away with it last season, and we won the league. And I do wonder if he thinks, well, look, I'm not saying this is right, but devil's advocate. I do wonder if he thinks, well, We did it last season. Kovacic was a year more experienced. As you're saying, he's definitely more capable of probably playing at a slightly higher level. Bernardo is absolutely going to be central this season. We hope, and I think he will be, and we'll get onto that in a minute, because obviously there's an issue there on the wingers. Hopefully De Bruyne back. I know it's a different position, but the point I'm making is more midfield options, which would, if you have better players even ahead of the defender, it tends to even more of a chance as well, because teams camp deeper and all that kind of stuff. So the more quality available, usually there's more solutions. And I wonder if Pep will thinking, well, we can make it work. I still feel the reason they haven't gone from anyone is because they want a big signing. I think they want a big signing. I think there's Pep hinted in the press conference, one of his last ones, that they tried a backup, but they can't be a guy who plays every 2 out of 10 games, because it just doesn't work. And I think he's very right to say that. Like, it's why it's like a Bruno Guimaraes or someone like Adam Wharton or whatever, who can play alongside him would be perfect, because they get the up to speed, and they're not just dusting off the cobwebs and coming up onto the pitch and hoping to be up to speed in the most important position in Manchester City side. It just doesn't work that way. So I do wonder if City have looked around and gone, well, we're not going to pay 100 million for Bruno Guimaraes, because it's just 100 million. I wish they would personally, but I wonder if they're waiting around for something else. They're waiting around because they're not afraid to wait, and that's what makes us stressed. They waited for Diaz, they waited for Haaland after Aguero. They wait, don't they, to get it done? And I don't know. What do you reckon the reason is if we don't sign him? Do you think he's just happy with it, or market?
I agree it would be nice, and I think Guardiola's probably having conversations saying, that's a position that I would like. But I think we also have to sort of address the elephant in the room and say that whoever City sign this summer, they might be playing under a different manager next season. Yeah. They might be playing in a different league, but that's a completely separate issue. But there is at this point a very, very real chance Guardiola isn't City's manager this time next summer. And if you go out and I know exactly, but we do have to sort of address it in the lens of this summer. And if you go out and splash 9 figures on Bruno Guimaraes and say, look. And I mean, it works alternatively. I don't think he would take much tempting into coming, but you say you've got a year under Pep Guardiola, that most players in world football would absolutely take that. But the new manager comes in, he's going to want a transfer kitty to work with. You're going to then have different positions. Kevin De Bruyne, for example, he might not be here. Edison, his contract might, it's going to be a big summer next year, whatever happens, whether it's with Guardiola or without. I just do wonder if the biding the time a little bit and waiting for that, because like you said, they're used to being patient, and while Guardiola's in the chair, you'd back him to solve any problem, even if he had 11 players for the entire campaign, you'd back him to sort of solve it. So I think that's another issue as well, that whatever City do in the transfer market this summer does have that shadow of next summer hanging over them.
The Pep departure shadow, potentially. No, I think you're right as well. I mean, I do think there's a tendency to lean on Pep a little bit, but I think we presume that isn't a Pep's making as well. I think we presume that. Look, if that was the case, that we're constantly going against Pep's wishes, he would have left ages ago. Like, literally, it's as simple as that. Like, you forget, like, Pep goes, no, I want a small squad. I'll be fine. I can play him here, and Pep's head goes, and galaxy brain mode kicks in, and he goes, Bernardo Silva is left back. Oscar Bob as a false 9, Rico Lewis as a left winger, and his head just goes to this space where everyone's like, "Oh, he's on it again." I can imagine he immediately pulls out a whiteboard and he starts moving things around. Chica's like, "Well, he solved it," and then we win the league. And it's not ideal, but it's like I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of it comes from Pep saying, "No, he's been stubborn. He's not the right for me. I agree. Well, I'll make it work, and we go for him next year." He said, because that's what Pep's like, And ultimately, I think they do try and keep him happy. I would not be surprised if it's very different post Pep, and we just literally splash the cash a little bit more because other managers demand it. But Pep isn't. We know this for a long time now. Since the formidable season where we had a reasonably bloated squad and a lot of players left after. I know we won a lot of trophies that season. People will still say, we should do that, but then we won the treble with even less players. But since then, the squad's been quite narrow, so it's obviously very much of what Guardiola's making. So it is what it is. I'm happy to see Bernardo back in the centre. That makes me feel a lot happier. I'm sure you feel the same, right?
Yeah, I think everyone sort of points to Liverpool 2018-19 as sort of like maybe the archetypal, the archetypal Bernardo performance. And look, I don't think anyone can tell you truly where he was playing that night, and I don't think anyone can tell you truly where he's played all over. But he did have great success on the right hand side in the treble season, which it feels weird. It's like every great thing about that season, bar maybe Grealish and Haaland, has just ceased. Well, Rodri as well, of course, but he just ceased to exist. Like Stones stepping into midfield, bar obviously the fitness didn't happen as much last season. Ake was playing more centre half. Gavardio came in and obviously did that left back role.
Kanji's not a right back anymore. Yeah,
Kanji's not a right back. It's like we just had this perfect moment in time of about 6 months. But I think Bernardo Silva, especially considering the limitations as we spoke about behind him, and if Kovacic is playing that lone 6 role, what perfect player to have next to, just in front, alongside, whatever it might be, than the workhorse that is Bernardo Silva, who turned 30. Ollie Kirsch on our show sort of said that's a bit of a jump scare, and I think he was right. You know, you do see him, he looks like he's just going to be going on forever and ever and ever. I do wonder if that engine's ever going to stop.
He's fine for
Hopefully
a while.
It's not. Yeah, how crazy is it that he's starting another season in Manchester after everything that's come before it?
I was saying this morning, I feel like he's reasonably settled actually right now. Like, I know personally, like fatherhood does change you that way, and like I think he maintains he wants to be. I don't think he ever wanted to leave Manchester City. I think he just wanted to be closer home to family.
Yeah.
And
I think he wanted to take Manchester City to. I mean, look,
yeah, absolutely.
Please, if he
Please
wants
do,
to
mate,
sort of send us all over there, we'll more than happily follow
Look,
to
I hope
Lisbon.
geoengineering weather is actually true, not conspiracy theory. Get seeding some sunshine somehow.
Yeah,
you know, like no, honestly, I feel like Bernardo. It's been notably quiet this summer on the Bernardo front. I think obviously the market's not there for him, but I feel he's looking at a situation where he knows his contract. He probably isn't the worst thing in the world for his kid to grow up speaking English. I know these little things come into your head as a parent, they really do. And I do feel like, you know, they're sort of settled. And then you're probably thinking, you know what, 2 years from now, if we don't move, I would have won loads, you know, earn loads of money, and I'll go home and live in Benfica on a free transfer or something like that. And it's like, and my kid at that point will be 3 or 4, you know, then they can get their time. Like, it's not a bad life, you know.
Do you think he'll ever, you know, say for example he stays another 2 seasons for argument's sake? Do you think he'll ever get into maybe not statue territory, but sort of that one below? Because he's done it all. He's been part of every great team.
I think he is in that one below already. I don't think he'll get statue.
Sort of,
it's too much of a queue.
Yeah.
If he scores 30 goals the next 2 seasons, then maybe.
Yeah,
but
or
like,
a Champions League winner, something like that. I think maybe.
But I don't think Rodri will get one. Yeah, I mean, he's done everything.
Oh, I think he absolutely will. I think he's. I've said this is going to sound crazy. It might be a bit jumping the gun. He's one of my favourite City players of all time. Maybe the favourite, and I think he'll go down as one of the greatest. I think I think they're already making his statue. To be fair.
Well, then you think about it though. That means the statues fill up very quickly. De Bruyne's going to have 1 billion% surely.
Yeah,
Pep's going to have 1
billion%.
Yeah. Look, if Foden stays until the end of his career, he's going to have one day. And like eventually, you're going to have a squad outside the stadium. Like there's only so much you can do.
There is Stadio Olimpico in Rome. If anyone's ever been there, they do have. I mean, they're like Roman gods and sort of statues there, but they do have loads around the stadium, so maybe that's what they're about.
Your internet like paused as you said loads, and it was really dramatically slowed down. Like, it was really well timed. It just went so which I don't know if you did it for anyone else, but there was a wonderful additional effect. But no, I've not been, and that sounds funny. But it sounds like I wouldn't be surprised if we're there at that point. So obviously, Foden staying central. De Bruyne will be back this season. Obviously, you know, O'Reilly and Kovacic there. But let's talk about the wingers. It looks like these are much reported going to be our winger options this season. But Doku on the left, Grealish on the left, and Bob and Savinho over on the right. To me, I like that. I like it a lot. I think fundamentally the way that the setup of our wingers is going to change how Manchester City play. I don't really see how it won't. I think there's too much energy there, too much youthful exuberance that, you know, I think it's going to force chances and it's going to force crosses, and I think it's going to force us naturally to play different because Pep will understand what they bring, and I think it'll change what happens behind those players too. Do you share those sentiments?
Absolutely. It's almost as if when I'm playing Football Manager, that's what I like to have. 4 quality wingers who, you know, you can step in. A couple of them, 3 of them are of youthful age, for want of a better term. Obviously, Grealish brings the experience, he brings the control, he brings the sort of something different to the others. But Oscar Bob has emerged, and there was a bit of talk at the start of the summer about him potentially moving on. It feels like even if an £80 million bid came in this summer, that City would shirk that off because he is part of the first team furniture, I guess, going into this new season. Savinho, Doku, they're your mercurial talents, I guess, in terms of just sort of can bring it on. We saw what Savinho did against United in the Community Shield. He came on and sort of really sparked the fire. And you've still got, not that I want to see them play here necessarily, but you've still got Foden, you've still got Bernardo Silva who can play those roles as well. So I think possibly for the first time, God, I'm trying to think back to when City had better options on the wing, maybe Sane, Sterling, but even below that, there wasn't the alternatives. You've got 2 options minimum on the bench every single week who can come on and add something totally different. And I think that's the best bit about all 4 of them. They're in some ways similar, but also different in their own way. So I'm really, really excited to see not only that, but how they can service Haaland up front, because possibly last season, if City struggled, I know it's going to sound mad, he scored loads of goals, but there were games where he just didn't get the service. So I think that could change this season. Sorry,
absolutely. Savinho already showed signs of wanting to whipping across and all that kind of stuff, and obviously he's used to playing with big man at Girona last season as well, in Dubvik and Stuani as well. So I feel like the Haaland's going to come alive, and I do think Oscar Bob is going to have such a good, strong run in this team early on that he's going to stake a claim. And look, it's exciting having these dribblers. When you think about comparatively Grealish and Bernardo Silva, both got quite functional at times, and like there's so much more vibrancy to this, so much more energy, that it's exciting. It's really exciting. I do think there's a real joy to that potential forward line. We can't ignore, though, unfortunately, the big gap behind Erling Haaland there. McAtee's just there because I needed to put him on the graphic somewhere. And also, he did play false 9 technically in a couple of preseason games. I don't think he's going to be an option as a false 9. I think it'd be someone like Foden or Oscar Bob ahead of him. I think he was there on the pitch in those games simply because he was just making up the numbers. How concerned are you about the lack of a backup striker? Personally, I am quite concerned. I feel like as much as false 9 would work, I can't deny that there's a gaping hole for experience there, and I don't know. I don't feel like the false 9 would work with this squad as it did with the previous squad, where we did it previously when we had David Silva. And we had, Gundogan and Bernardo Silva, looked much younger as well, and Mahrez, and he was all a little bit more technical, I'd argue, a little bit more pauser, so to speak. And it doesn't feel like we have quite that level of, genius in midfield to allow for. Don't get me wrong, Foden's there, De Bruyne's there, but it's a different kind of genius, I would argue. So look, we could do a good job, and maybe I'm wrong, but I do think we have a top big man up top issue. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I said before, I felt like right back was an issue, one of my biggest issues, but in terms of realistic issues that City can and probably will address this summer, that backup striker role is certainly one of Guardiola's comments I thought were really interesting. It did feel a bit like it was almost a come and get me plea to sort of a striker out there if one exists. I would love, and I mean, we spoke about this at length when City had the false 9, but I would love them to just break the mold slightly and go out and get a seasoned professional, someone who's not going to be too fussed to just sit there, be on the bench. I mean, nowadays, 5 subs, I think, is it 9 players you get to name on the bench? Might even be more. They've got this room. Let's face it, there's room.
Yeah.
And I look at Real Madrid. They basically won the Champions League last season because Joselu came on and scored. Well, he didn't score 2 goals throughout the entire season, but he scored 2 goals in that game against Bayern, and it shut things up. Even Choupo-Moting at Bayern, they're not names I'm putting forward as potential options.
No, but where's our Choupo-Moting? I get it.
Yeah,
where's our Edin
someone
Dzeko?
like that. So you joke, but he scored a wonder goal. I say a wonder goal. It was a cultured finish from inside the box.
But that was not a joke. Absolutely never joke about Edin Dzeko. No. I would be buzzing if he came back on a 6-month contract or whatever. I'd be buzzing, delighted.
That is something I'd do on Football Manager. I think he'd someone like that who is just going to have a smile on the face. They're going to win trophies. You're not going to have to sort of tempt them with minutes. The chance to potentially win a Champions League, potentially win a Premier League. I'm sure there's someone out there. It's just City's transfer policy has been so rigid for so long. I just wonder if that's something they'd entertain, which is a shame because Haaland, for all of his brilliance, and for me, the best striker, out-and-out striker in world football, it can be one-dimensional at times. And that's fine because when you only need a 15% Haaland to get goals, when he's 100%, he gets loads. But if there is that off day where he misfires, and there are those days where he does misfire, you kind of do need to shake it up a bit. And I'm not sure how easy it will be to just plug and play false 9 in those matches where either he's not available, and let's face it, I'd bet a lot of money on him at some point being injured for minimum 5 games. I just don't know if I want to go back to it. And just finally, I don't want to see Foden moved again. I felt like last season we saw Foden in all of his brilliance, and yes, he's going to start the season in this position. He's going to play most of his minutes there. But you just wanted him to have the team and be that next to De Bruyne or sort of in place of De Bruyne. So you don't want to see him sort of doing the dirty work of a false 9. I would like to see an addition, I think, in that area.
Yeah, I absolutely agree, mate. I don't. Foden there it'd be a backward step for his career, I reckon. I could be wrong, but I feel like it would genuinely slow down a lot of the progress he made. And he's in such a ridiculous reign of form for Manchester City that it'd be such a shame to see that momentum shoved aside, essentially. And he could do fine there, don't get me wrong. He probably would do a more than serviceable job, but look, he's obviously better facing the goal. He's obviously getting the ball, but he's obviously the ball. I mean, where McAtee is on that graphic right now, that's where Foden wants to be always, not where Haaland is. He wants to be turning around and putting the top corner from 20 yards, and he wouldn't have his trademark, put it that way, if he wasn't playing, in that role. So yeah, and I absolutely agree. I do feel like we are going to look. The holes clearly are. I would argue. Which do you think is the bigger issue? The Rodri one or the Haaland one? Back up. I think that's more close than people realise.
Yeah, I'd say it's 60-40. Either way, I don't know. I don't know which way, actually. I think it is on a knife edge. I would say if you can get, and it's a big ask, but if you can get 85% of the season out of Rodri, which he has done in the past, and I think has he could do again. Yeah. It's totally dependent on his fitness. But I do think Haaland's probably, first of all, more injury prone, and second of all, City could do with shaking it up in a couple of games. So maybe the strike. I don't know. Like I said, I've been flip-flapping throughout the last couple of weeks, and I think it's going to change again. If it was a case of only signing one, today, at this moment, 7 p.m, whatever it is, on Tuesday, 13th of August, I think striker, but ask me tomorrow. Might have changed my mind.
I think the reason we're more tempted to say striker is because we've just seen a season without a Rodri backup, so we know we technically can handle it, even if it's difficult.
Yeah.
So I think we don't know the solution to the Haaland thing, and that's scarier. I don't know the answer either, but I think there's a reasonably strong argument either way. I would be more tempted by the Rodri backup right now, but then at the same time, that could be the stupidest thing I've ever said. I do think we should go for both. Like, what happened to the old school? Like, do you remember used to be on Football Manager? You might be too young, but you'd be like centre back stroke strikers. Like Dion Dublin was like a centre back stroke striker. Where have those guys gone, man? Well, we need a DM stroke striker who can play that. Do both roles at the same time. But I would not be surprised if City do step into the market. Guardiola essentially put adverts out in the paper for a striker, and he was saying we need someone who wants to have a great time.
We've seen it with Akanji. Yeah, in the last sort of hours of a window, and I say City have been rigid in their transfer strategy. We have seen City address a problem that popped up basically overnight when Laporte's injury was sort of considered to be worse than it was. So look, I think that's absolutely going to be something to watch out on in the coming weeks. And the Euros pushes back business as well. Had the European Championship not been on, we would have probably already had the squad sewn up. So yeah, no time to panic. Well, there's never really a time to panic when Guardiola's the manager, but I do think we'll see sort of a couple of things starting to move.
I think it's divisive, and I think people in the chat implying the board are losing the faith of the fans. I mean, I don't think they are. I mean, we're two fans here. I think it's very much depends of some fans on Twitter, arguably, and there's some in real life who go, "Yeah, we should get this." But I think you'd be surprised how relaxed most City fans are, match-going ones and local ones, are with the squad. We're not saying it's perfect, but there's barely a squad we've ever had that's been perfect, I would argue. And there's always a hole somewhere. There is, and you look around every single Premier League squad, and there's a hole somewhere, and everyone's got their own player that they're worried about. What if he gets injured? What if that happens? It's the same at every single team. If Saka's out for the season, they aren't leading on Trossard all season. I guarantee you they're gonna struggle there. I don't know the specific examples, but we always get into these minutiae about we want 22 world class players and nothing's good enough. It ain't gonna work that way. It isn't gonna work that way. I do think the squad is. I think it's an 8 out of 10. I don't think it's a 10 out of 10. I think there are maybe you could say 7, but City 7 is still a 9 out of 10 for most teams. That's the point I'm making, because it's a 7 out of 10 with 9 out of 10 quality, if that makes sense. That's the thing, is there's so much quality there that if we're lucky with injuries and suspensions, we could breeze it. I'm not saying we will do, but that's the level that City have got. And Pep will do something. He always does. And I do feel like there'll be a signing or two. I feel like
Pet's been very vocal about it, and I feel like someone's going to come in one of those positions, hopefully both. And we'll see. We will see. We've got an awful lot of money in the bank right now. We'll see. The last thing I want to talk about, mate, is the young lads. Bob, it's weird. I don't want to talk about Bob as a young lad really now. I think he's just there now. I feel like he's just gone up. He's there. Maybe I'm wrong. Am I wrong on that quickly?
I think he's graduated. I think he's gone from being a youngster who's on the periphery to being, like I said, I think we'll see a lot of him at least 35 appearances this season. A good chunk of them starts as well.
No, I agree. I absolutely agree. I think he's a starter now. He's a first team regular that's going to rotate. And look, we forget that even Mahrez in the treble season was on the bench a lot towards the end of that season, and he was a rotation player at the end, and you never call Mahrez not a key player, and I think Bob's going to get very similar to that level of importance in the squad very quickly. Obviously, the two outliers there are Nico O'Reilly, the massive outlier, and obviously James McAtee. McAtee back in the squad, of course, after 2 seasons out on loan. I felt in pre-season, not saying he sparkled, but I definitely felt he looked like more like a senior player. I remember previously when he was in pre-season, he was snatching at things, he was rushing things, he was trying to do something special. You could sense that he really wanted to impress Guardiola. He definitely played in pre-season, in my opinion, and in the Community Shield, if you watch it back. Didn't say he was a standout, but he definitely played maturely. I think he had the highest pass completion of anyone who played more than 45 minutes in the Community Shield. He kept the ball smartly, intelligently. There's more to come from him, but I felt like he looked, first team ready in terms of like men's football. Nico O'Reilly, obviously just a kid still. He's 19, but he's very inexperienced in this. The context of Nico O'Reilly, for what it's worth, I know people said he played poor in the Community Shield. He did. I'm not going to deny that. He was embarrassing, but the context is he was out for Bournemouth all of last season, so he's still on the road to recovery from his fitness as well. And he played 2 games towards the end of last season. Now Guardiola said, right, now you're the first team, and now you're in a new role you've never played before, which is incredibly difficult for anyone. Never mind a guy recovering fitness for the best team in the world, arguably. As a City fan at Wembley against United, it's difficult. How much do you think these lads are going to get a chance this season? If you were to guess how many games for McAtee and likewise Nico O'Reilly.
Yeah, I think Nico O'Reilly will be a player who's there, and I think we'll see the chunk of him bar, I don't know, a League Cup first round game against Wickham or someone like that. I think we'll see the chunk of his minutes come in as 5-minute cameos at the end. I think for Nico O'Reilly this season, the most important thing will be training with City players and being around those, sort of understanding the deeper level of what it means to play. Because you saw it with the likes of Rico Lewis, Oscar Bob, McAtee as well. When they're on the pitch, they know what to do, and there is that underlying knowledge from being in City's academy. But it takes another thing to sort of work with a Haaland. It takes another thing to work alongside a De Bruyne. Those top elite level players in European football. So look, I would be surprised if we saw O'Reilly more than 15 times. Maybe that's a bit small. Maybe certainly less than 20. McAtee,
I think that's about right. I think 15 is right. I think that's enough for what it's worth, by the way. 10, 15 games for a guy of his age. Look, Zinchenko was that at one point, and then Foden was that at one point. Like Oscar Bob was that last season. Yeah, Cole Palmer. Look, if he's got the same amount of minutes as Oscar Bob did last season, he should be buzzing, mate. Absolutely buzzing. But that's an elevation. And you got to bear in mind, the point is, it's not always about the minutes they get that season. It's what they do with the minutes and how they learn from them. So if he gets 15 games of minutes, and I don't know, it's only probably like average of 15, 20 minutes per game. But if he gets that, I guarantee at the start of next season, when the muscle memory's kicked in and the training, and he feels like he's part of the team, he's going to be such a better player for that. And he'll only be 20 years old at that point. So I think that'd be great. On to McAtee.
Yeah.
What do you reckon? What about minutes for McAtee then?
Yeah, I'm excited. I think the jury's out a little bit on terms of minutes. Is it going to be more than 20 appearances? Is it going to be sort of around that 35 mark? I think it's probably at this stage closer to the 20. But again, that's absolutely fine. I think his job will be alleviating the pressure on Foden, on De Bruyne, possibly starting, I don't know, thinking off the top of my head, not Ipswich because it's this close to start the campaign, but a game like that when you've got Champions League sort of 1 week and you've got, I don't know, an FA Cup. I think he'll come in for them sort of matches. But I think I'm excited to see it more than anything. I think for so long we've been sat here saying, how great would it be to start seeing more of these academy players? We had it with Foden, we had it teased with Cole Palmer, and unfortunately, I still maintain I'd have kept him over. I'd have had him in the squad now. And then Rico Lewis, obviously, we've had plenty from. We're starting the season with 5 academy graduates in the squad, which is look, yeah, it's perfect. It's absolutely perfect. I'm excited to see it. If City don't win a trophy this season, I'm just excited to watch how the squad works out.
Yeah, absolutely. I do think James is going to get some football. Not loads. I don't think he's going to get loads because I think it's going to be difficult. But I do the random thumbs down on your screen there, which is funny. You had a bubble pop up on your screen with a thumbs down. I don't know what caused that. Who knows? Either way, you generally did your video
Bizarre.
player.
No,
Someone's
someone's
down.
trolling me.
Yeah, but either way, what I was going to say about McAtee, the way I feel about McAtee is like I'm not going to pretend he was incredible in preseason, but I do think Pep's genuinely fascinated by McAtee. I think people forget just how good he was at youth level. Like you go watch compilations of him playing for England. The reason I'm saying that is because this is the easy way to catch up. I saw them in person a lot of these games for youth level, and he was a special talent. He would drip past people for fun, play beautiful little reverse through balls, put it in the top corner from 20 yards. Dart past 2 or 3 people and putting a perfect cross on top of Liam Delap's head. He was so good. He was so good, and he was easily the guy for England's youth teams as well, as he was the guy in a team with Cole Palmer, Liam Delap, and all that kind of stuff. He was excellent, absolutely brilliant. So I guess the point I'm making here is that Guardiola knows how much natural talent he's got. And it might be a little bit dormant in a Manchester City sense right now. But I feel like McAtee's doing that thing where he's sort of trying to ease himself into it, and get a feel for the team. And Foden did that a lot at first as well. Foden kept it very simple when he first came through. Bit younger, of course, but he did keep it simple. And I think Pep's trying to see if he can get that talent, get him comfortable, then let him express himself a bit. Because he did show glimpses of that at Sheffield United. Admittedly, it's Sheffield United, it's not the level. But there were some moments of brilliance for them, and he showed that he can score a wonder goal, or he can, beat a couple of people and put in a delightful cross. He did that at Sheffield United at Premier League and Championship level. So if you can do that for them, he'll be on the ball more here. If he finds his feet there, I think there's a player there. I'm not saying he's going to get 30 games a season per se. I don't think he will do. But I think if he gets 20 appearances in all competitions and 10 of them are starts, I think that's more than enough for where he's at right now in his career. Because, I don't know. I think he's there on merit. I do feel even if we'd bought some people, I think he'd still be in the squad because I think he would say, "Can I stay?" And Pep would go, "Sure, I like you." And I think that's where the situation is at. I think McAtee's there because he wants to be there. He's told, Pep he wants to stay, and Pep's gone, "Yeah, I want cheeky, let him stay. I want to see what he goes to." So I enjoy it. So overall, look, the squad isn't perfect. I think we'd probably agree with that. It's not perfect. There are obvious flaws in that squad, and I think they'll be addressed in some way. But I think there is a youthful makeup to that squad, which could be fun. You look around and you see, obviously, Rico Lewis. You see the energy of Foden, Savinho, Bob, Doku, McAtee, Haaland, Bernardo back in the centre for a little bit of energy. Kovacic, second season to better. Vardio should be better second season. Walker probably did. But we'll see how Guardiola deals with it. I don't think Guardiola, by the way, personally, is going to be quite as intent on keeping Kyle Walker happy this season as it was last year. That's my big take. I think last season was all about keeping him happy when he stayed. This season, I don't think he's going to be quite as strong. I might be wrong there, but we'll see. But overall, I think the squad, I think it's, for Manchester City, I think it's a 7 out of 10. But I think there's quality of a 9 out of 10 there. How would you rate it?
I'll do something I never usually do, and I'll be a bit more optimistic. I'll say 8.5. And nice. That's possibly just on an entertainment value because, like I said, I'm really excited to see. I'm excited to see Doku. I'm excited to see what Grealish can do. I'm excited to see how James McAtee adds to the squad. I'm excited to see Kovacic's sort of next level development as a second season. I'm excited to see Erling Haaland having had a full summer's rest. Hopefully, sort of getting rid of those niggles that he had last season. I'm excited to see Oscar Bob. I mean, look, yeah, it's great. Like I said, whatever happens, we've just had 4 Premier League titles on the bounce. We won the Champions League 2 seasons ago. It would be incredible to go and win those 2 competitions again, or if not one of them. But the squad is it's going to be fun to watch. And I think for all of City's brilliance the last couple of seasons, there was a predictability about it because you knew what you were going to get with City and it was always going to be great. This season, there's a few questions, but they're exciting questions. So, yeah, I'm certainly excited to get going.
It's looking pretty decent, I reckon. That is the squad depth covered. Thank you so much to Amos for joining me, mate. It's been an absolute pleasure. I really enjoyed that. Guys, thank you for watching. If you're watching this live, please give the video a like and subscribe to the channel. That was the squad depth covered. We've already covered the transfers. And next up on this channel, we'll be looking at the potential tactical setup for Manchester City. In a bit, bye-bye.